Over the last few years, Francisco Alvarez and Baty were the two best prospects in the Mets farm system. Now, they are starring in roles at the MLB level. Is the Alvarez-Baty era here to stay? Are these the star players the Mets will build around into the future? I'll be discussing that on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, I wanted to spend today's show on the Mets, young players who are thriving at the big league level, because I have not really been able to take too much of a snapshot of their season. I did discuss Francisco Alvarez at one point, saying he's earned a starting role, and he's only played better since I recorded that podcast. And now, with an off day, we have a chance to look at what's been about a month of these two guys playing regular roles on the New York Mets, because as Baty was called up and made his debut on April 17th, we began to see Francisco Alvarez worked more and more into the daily lineup, and Baty, same thing. Maybe there was a slight, bit of him playing with a couple days off in the beginning, but he's mostly been a regular over the last couple of weeks. And what we've seen is two players who have been remarkably consistent. And I want to start with Francisco Alvarez because if you look on YouTube, right in the show list there, I say Alvarez, top 5 catcher in MLB. And that sounds crazy. But at the same time, if we look at a sample size now of about 24 games played, what he's done since Baty came up, when it comes to Fangraphs wins above replacement, he's 6th in all of baseball. That's how good he's been. And every week that I knock off of it, the more he climbs up that list. As far as if I take that date from the stats, instead of looking from April 17th, and I move it a Monday and take it to the 24th, and then I move it again to the 1st, to the 8th of May. Every time you take a week off because of how well he's been playing lately, you see his numbers stand out more and more. Now, obviously, this is during a hot stretch, but what we've seen over the sample of a month is a guy that's contributed on both offense and defense. That's not something that was advertised throughout the minor leagues. The defensive side of things has been incredible to see, and I know I've already addressed these numbers once on Alvarez, but it bears repeating as he continues to do well when it comes to the defensive metrics and how we grade him. And honestly, the eye test too, the thing about Alvarez I've said is, damn it, this kid doesn't play really hard at all times. And you notice that. So the framing stuff continues to be impressive. He is in the 89th percentile when it comes to catcher framing runs. Okay, so he is stealing strikes on a consistent basis. His strike rate over 50%. That is really solid, 51.1%. You compare him to other catchers in baseball, and currently based on the catcher framing leaderboard, Francisco Alvarez comes in the top 10. Okay, so some guys have climbed ahead of him since the last time we checked, but the fact that he's holding serve in that top 10, the fact that his strike rate continues to be among one of the best in baseball, he's 7th there, you're not getting a bad defensive catcher. And in fact, the metrics are telling you get a good one. Well, that's important because when it comes to getting production from the catcher spot, how many teams have a guy that can be an above average defensive catcher and can put up the offensive stats that we've seen from Francisco Alvarez over the past month? Because in 24 games played, he's hitting 275, 351 on base, 551 slugging. He has 5 home runs during that time. Okay, only guys with more home runs are Salvador Perez, Sean Murphy, and Cal Raleigh, guys that are ahead of him in the Fangraphs wins above replacement department since the 17th, right? And the WRC plus, I should mention as well, is at 150. That's 50% better than your league average hitter. If we were to take this sample size of catchers, put it at a minimum plate appearance of 50 to see the guys that are regularly behind the dish, and you then grade it out by WRC plus, Francisco Alvarez is coming in at, I think it was second or third. Sorry, but the stats just toggled on me to a different page. Going back now, fourth actually. So you got Will Smith, Salvador Perez, and Blake Sable. Alvarez has a 150 WRC plus, 50% better than your league average hitter, and behind those catchers. Now, like I said, knock off a week at a time for Alvarez, okay? So now we shrink the stats to since April 24th. All of a sudden, you look at the offensive numbers, second best in baseball behind only Salvador Perez with the 158 WRC plus, hitting 281, 369 on base, 561 slug, okay? And the walk rate is over 10%, the strikeout rate 21.5%. So the fact that he's not striking out a ton, that he's taking his walks, that's showing a mature approach from a young hitter. Amazing to see. All right, so now we shrink it again, right? We go to May 1st. Sample size gets a little bit smaller, but this more shows the recent play. So since this month began, Alvarez, 271 average, 364 on base, 604 slug. You see Will Smith jump back atop the leaderboard when it comes to WRC plus at 174, Alvarez at 166. He is second best since the beginning of this month in Fangraphs wins above replacement behind only Will Smith. So I'm not saying that he's definitely going to remain a top 5 catcher in baseball throughout this entire season. But top 10? Maybe that's what I should have put on the board on YouTube. You're looking top 10 catcher in baseball? There's a chance. Because, again, if he continues to grade out as an above average defender, well, you look at what he does offensively, and yeah, it's not crazy to say that he could take that type of a leap. Now let's get this a little bit further here, just to bring up fun statistics. Okay, over the last 2 weeks, all right? So again, we're just taking a week off at a time. Francisco Alvarez offensively, best catcher in baseball, 265 average, 359 on base, 676 slug, 180 WRC plus. He leads the league in F4 at 0.6. And he has 4 home runs over the last 2 weeks. The power numbers continue there. And there's every chance that Alvarez can be a guy that paces baseball in short order when it comes to catcher home runs. I mean, Salvador Perez has had a lot this year, but I'm just saying he has the pop, and the position has a lack of pop to the point where that could happen in pretty short order. All of this is to say that I don't care how well Gary Sanchez swings the bat. I don't care if Tomas Nido's eyes are fixed. I don't care if Omar Narvaez has all the experience and pitchers love throwing to him. Francisco Alvarez is the starting catcher of the New York Mets right now. And if what we're getting is a taste of how good he can become, because remember, this is still a 21-year-old, that year over year gets better and better and better and better and better. Long-term, top 5 catcher in baseball, that is getting close to the expectation of where he could be at some point in the next 3 years. Where on a consistent basis, you're looking at Alvarez, and he's in that conversation with Adley Rutschman and JT Realmuto and Will Smith. And the way baseball works, a guy like Realmuto or something like that could fall off that list as new catchers come up. And that's where a guy like Alvarez slides in. I think they have found the future of the catcher position. I don't know if he's going to put up a career like Mike Piazza behind the dish offensively. But the Mets got him at a younger age, and I'd be talking extension soon. Maybe not right away, because we've seen how that worked for Andres Gimenez and the Guardians right now. But here's a guy that just changed his representation, that's talking about spending the rest of his career with Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos in a Mets uniform. This is where you put on your Alex Anthopoulos hat and try to lock him up to a team-friendly extension early and buy out some of those years of free agency, because you could conceivably get this guy locked up to be your catcher for the next decade. And if he continues what this little sample has showed us, that's going to be a really good decade of baseball. So really excited what we've seen with him. And then the crazy thing is, I had Brett Baty as my top prospect in this system going into the season. And I still think that long term, he's even more of a sure thing to be an above average contributor. I want to give you a look at what Baty has done so far this season in just a minute. Before we do, though, today's episode is brought to you by So Rare. Our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace, transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. So Rare MLB managers who rank at or near the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards, which can include So Rare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, and VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Prizes may vary depending on the competition. Head to SoRare.com/lockedon, that's spelled SORARE.com. Draft your team, a free player card, set your lineup, start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that is SoRare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Brett Baty has now played 29 games for the New York Mets, and during that time, I think what we have seen is the floor of what Brett Baty will be moving forward, and that is why I'm still so high on him and so excited for his future because, I think to a certain extent, we've seen kind of the ceiling of what Francisco Alvarez can be. And what I mean by that, not is that, he could never be better than this. What I'm saying is what we've seen for the last couple of weeks, like that's as good as it can get. A guy hitting 4 home runs from the catcher position, behind the plate, doing a great job defensively. All of that is kind of the height of what you would expect for him to become, a guy that can put a 150 WRC plus up. I mean, there's not a lot of guys that will put up a 150 WRC plus over the length of a season, okay, especially from the catcher position. So that's where I look at Alvarez and say, man, this heater he's on, that could be, the best that it gets, but not that he won't repeat it. It's just this is what a great Francisco Alvarez looks like. I don't think we've gotten a great Brett Baty yet. I think we've gotten a good Brett Baty, and I think that's the thing about him, is that what he's done is he showed you the floor, because during this stretch, he did go through a slump in the middle of it. And the numbers, over 105 plate appearances, have bore out to right about what I think the floor should be for him moving forward. 258 average. I think he's going to hit better than that. But I think most seasons he's going to give you at least a 260 average. 343 on base. Again, I would say I think that's going to be over 350 in a lot of seasons. But 340 as the baseline floor, I think okay. 430 slug. Again, I expect more from him. But you put together the slug and the on-base percentage right now, he's sitting at a 770 OPS. You want that over 800. You want him to be a better player than that, of course. But he's still been solid. That's still good numbers. His 120 WRC plus, 20% better than your league average hitter. That is an above average, not an elite all-star, but above average starting third baseman, particularly because he's been great with the glove. He has 4 home runs during this span. He's got 10 RBIs, 12 runs scored. The thing I like most is, just like Alvarez, walk rate, strikeout rate. Walk rate 10.5, strikeout rate 21%. These are not guys that are being overwhelmed by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to, facing MLB pitching. They have shown that, okay? Now, you go to some of the advanced metrics and stuff, and this is where, Brett Baty allows you to dream even further. Because, for one, you have his hard hit percentage. This guy hits the ball hard consistently in a way few around baseball do. His hard hit percentage is in the top 5% of the league. He's hitting the ball hard 54.4% 0.9% of the time. What does that tell us? Better results are still coming. His expected batting average is 289. His expected slug is 510. Okay? There's every chance that Brett Baty is going to continue to get better and better and better. And that's, again, where I get back to this being the floor of what he can be. Look at, the barrel percentage, 64%, strikeout rate, 55%, walk rate, 65%, consistent at bats, finding the barrel at a good rate. If he were to find the barrel even more with the amount of times he's hitting the ball hard, because he's hitting the ball hard and missing the barrel sometimes, that's where you're going to see more extra base hits, more home runs, just better results across the board. But he's a work in progress in his first sustained amount of time facing MLB pitching, making adjustments, going through a slump, and still grading out so well across the board where even though the results haven't always been there, over time, we can expect them to come. Now, defensively, 84th percentile in outs above average at third base. He's been really good defensively. And what I like about those outs above average metrics, where he's grading out the best, okay, coming into the ball and lateral to third. Those are the areas when it comes to third base defense where you can't really fake it and where you need that athleticism that's showing up and where you see kind of the really good defensive third baseman stand out. It's being able to get to that backhand and guard that line and to be able to come in on balls and make that play on the little chopper so that little chopper isn't an infield hit that's coming back to bite your pitcher and instead you get that out. He's making those plays and making them with regularity. His arm is strong. His feet don't look slow at all at third base. He moves really well. He's good going back, catching pop-ups, whether they're in the outfield or you see him come in on some over in foul territory, make some plays that way. He just looks like a complete ball player all around. And honestly, right now, if I was to put him in the pecking order of Mets regulars, I really think he's right below your top guys when it comes to people that should be playing every day and who are giving it to you on both sides. So it's Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, and Brandon Nimmo when it comes to both sides. And then it's Baty. And then Alonso, to his credit, continues to improve at first base and is not at all a detriment there. Last year, the numbers didn't grade out Conley on him. Haven't checked him this year because honestly, at this point, I think you just know that Alonso draws his value from the bat. But Baty's now in that conversation with guys that, over the next 5 years, and actually looking at Alonso now, 78th percentile this year, and that's above average, having a great season across the board. But it's those 5 guys I look at and say, yes, these are the everyday players for the Mets moving forward. And then Alvarez comes in there as well at catcher, where I think he's going to grab that job and, will be the answer. But I'm not quite as sure about it as I am with Baty, whereas with Baty, I really have no doubts. To me, it just doesn't make sense to be benching him at all at this point because even if there's a slight dip against a lefty, the defense he brings you, it's worth it to keep running him out there because he's a guy that's going to continue to learn how to hit left-handed pitching. He already has. He already has taken strides year over year. So, to me, run him out there every day. Anyway, there's still a series to preview here, Mets versus Cubs. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. If you want tickets, I don't know if you're in Chicago, but maybe the next time the Mets come into town, Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps, you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress. With Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. The Mets play the Cubs at 7:40 Eastern time tonight. Catch every pitch of the Mets' hometown broadcast with Sirius XM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. Tonight, Kodai Senga going up against Drew Smyly. Senga coming off his best start as a Met, where it was 12 strikeouts against the Rays to begin this 5-game winning streak. So we'll see if he can keep it up. Smyly been really good this year. 2.86 ERA, 4-1. Not that we care about pitcher records anymore, but, when a team is winning more times than not with the starter on the mound, we should note it. Smyly, second year in Chicago, is pitching way better than he did last year. He's been one of the best free agent signings any team made. It's because he stayed with the same team. Felt like that was kind of something that I picked up on when I was looking at all the different free agent starters, was that the few guys that didn't end up going anywhere seemed to find more success for whatever that's worth. For the Mets, in this game, lefty starter, I don't know how they line it up. You would imagine Mark Vientos gets in there. Just wonder at whose expense, because you would think, unless the Mets make a move on Tommy Pham, that you'd see Mark Canha and Tommy Pham in this lineup. You would imagine that Starling Marte is going to be out there. The only thing the Mets could do is give Brandon Nimmo a day off, also considering he has been struggling a little bit lately, but they just had the day off on Monday. So if the Mets really wanted to force Reyes into the lineup, they could put Canha in center for a game or Pham in center, the other one in left, put Vientos at DH, and then have Baty at third or Escobar at third and then McNeil. I don't know how they're going to be playing against lefties right now. It feels like to get all of your righties in there, you have to bench Baty or McNeil. Last time we saw them bench both. So I hope that doesn't become the lineup at all. McNeil swinging a hot bat. I feel like you got to have him out there. And I want Brett Baty in there almost every day. So we'll see what they decide to do. If I had to guess, I'd probably guess it's Escobar playing third, Vientos at DH, and maybe they sit Nimmo for the day. We'll see. This is why you probably should cut Tommy Pham, just to make the roster make a little more sense and have one less mouth to feed. Although Mark Canha himself has not really done much to warrant playing time over Tommy Pham right now. So we'll see who kind of grabs those spots and those kind of opportunities against left-handed pitching when this lineup kind of solidifies. One way or the other, I imagine Mark Vientos is in there. Now, Tyler McGill versus Marcus Stroman, Game 2. Stro has a pretty good season up to this point, 3.05 ERA as the Cubs ace. McGill, 3.88 ERA. Mets are 5-2. Well, not the Mets. He's 5-2. I think the Mets might be even a little bit better. McGill been a very consistent starter for this team. So, as much as I've tried to poke holes in it based on what some of the numbers would tell us, certain point you just got to trust the fact that when he gets the ball, he's been dependable. Then you get to Thursday's game, Carrasco versus Taillon. Taillon, 8.10 ERA. Carrasco, 8.68 ERA. So that could be a slugfest of a rubber match if these teams split the first two. Now, looking at the hitters, Dansby Swanson, been pretty good. He's right up there atop the F4 leaderboards, 1.9 F4. He's getting on base at a 374 clip. Here was the shocking one for me. Strikeout rate that was always below 10% last year, around 7%. Or sorry, not strikeout, walk rate. He's doubled that this year. His walk rate's at 14.1%. Maybe that's because teams aren't pitching to him. I don't know, but the strikeout rate's down as well. Give the guy credit, because a lot of people felt like it was only one season that he got paid off of. And so far, he's doing a pretty nice job living up to the contract. Nico Horner hasn't had the best offensive season. Well, it's decent for him. 105 WRC+. I just feel like keep getting told this guy is supposed to be elite, and maybe he is, and I just don't watch him play regular enough. We'll get a chance to during this series. Cody Bellinger, 123 WRC+, 493 slugs, 7 homers for Bellinger in a bounce-back season. Ian Happ got an extension. He's getting on base over 400 right now. For the year, he's been really, really good. And Patrick Wisdom, 12 home runs. He's been solid. Seiya Suzuki has been good. Christopher Morel in limited time has been unbelievable, it looks like. And the one guy that hasn't really showed up yet, well, it's a couple. Trey Mancini, not having the best year. below average hitter based on WRC plus, and Matt Mervis in his early sample, the standout top prospect rookie that came up, has not hit up to this point, but I'm sure that could change at any time. That's kind of what you're going to see over the next couple of days. A Cubs team that I think has some interesting names throughout the lineup. Got some of their better starting pitching going in the first two games. So up to the Mets to try to get one of the two, likely with Senga on the hill. And then, maybe win a rubber match game. Who knows, though? Maybe this Mets team rolls and keeps up this 5-game winning streak. We'll be talking about it all tomorrow for you every day, so that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter, Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show, Locked On Mets.